method that will execute operating system commands. Well, for this this latest example, we should apply April 2010 CPU that contains the fixes for these Oracle Java vulnerabilities. And also we could revoke privileges to execute DBMS JVM experms package that is the package that we use to grant the Java privileges. Let's see now another example that exploits a buffer overflow vulnerability to disable database vault. This technique requires that we have execute privileges on a procedure that is vulnerable to buffer overflow. We will see a demonstration of using a vulnerability that was fixed in 2008. Well, this is the exploit. I won't enter into much detail of how buffer overflow vulnerabilities are exploited. Just will mention that the vulnerable parameter is dir path of this get full file name function. So when the buffer overflows, the EBX register, processor register, points to the beginning of this dir path buffer. So we override the EIP register with an address that we know that have a call EBX instruction. So when the buffer overflows, it will jump to this call EBX instruction and will start executing our buffer. Basically, the buffer here, I put the instructions that execute. It's basically a call for the system function in the Visual C++ runtime library, and then I call the endThread function so that the thread ends and there is no access violation or some other kind of exceptions when the execution continues. Well, let's see a quick example. For this, I will use Oracle 10 Release 2. We will see that we need to be a DBA to be able to call this procedure that contains the vulnerable, that contains the vulnerability. So let's see first the DLL. Has its correct name, so Oracle Database Vault is enabled, and we will execute this exploit, and the file should be renamed. and it's done. Here we have the file now is renamed, so the next time the Oracle service is restarted, Oracle Database Vault will not be enabled. Well, the best defense against buffer overflow is to stay up to date with the patches and to restrict execute permissions for packages so that we can reduce the attack surface. Oracle usually fixes buffer overflow with the critical patch updates that they release. So staying up to date with the patches is a good defense for this kind of vulnerabilities. But of course that this will be for the known vulnerabilities, so it is a good practice to reduce the attack surface by restricting the execute permissions on packages. Well, let's see another technique to compromise Database Vault. This will require create any procedure and execute any procedure privileges. And it's a quite simple technique. It just creates a procedure in the database owner schema and execute the procedure. As we know, the store procedures in Oracle executes by default with the permissions of the owner of the procedure. So if we are able to create a procedures in the MACSYS schema, we will be able to execute statements as this user. We will create a procedure that takes a string argument that is the statement that we want to execute. Here is the way to do it. We just put the prefix MACSYS so that the store procedures will be created in the MACSYS schema, and we just call execute immediate to execute the statement we just received. So, for example, with this, we are able to change the MACSYS password to any password we want. Let's see example. So we create a test user and grant just create any procedure and execute any procedure privileges. And with those privileges, we are able to change the MACSYS password. As I said, the MACSYS is the Database Vault owner user, that is the user with most privileges in Database Vault installation. So let's see first that we'll try to connect as the MACSYS user with any PSW password. We won't be able to do that, but after we execute this script, we will be able what's something. Well, here I restore the password. The script clean up everything and restore the password. So here, we can see that now I can connect MACSYS with any PSW password. Well, how can we different from this kind of attack? First, we can restrict the privileges that are needed to do this attack, that are create any procedure and execute any procedure privileges. And also there is another way, that is to protect the MACSYS schema with a realm. Once we have protected the MACSYS schema with a realm, we won't be able to create a procedure in this schema, because it will be protected, and they create any procedure system privileges will, even if we have this privilege, we will not be able to create a procedure in this protected schema. Well, let's see now some considerations for the SYS user. There are some things that are documented by Oracle, and actually they just say that it should be a trusted account, but it doesn't say much about what are the things that the SYS user can do. So I researched this a bit and found that it is possible to impersonate any user, including the MACSYS user, using the parse as user function. So we can call this function, and we will be able to, for example, change the MACSYS password. Actually, the SYS user doesn't have any administrative privileges with Database Vault. There are some other considerations and issues for the SYS user in older releases that are not present in latest releases. We were able to change, for example, the password, updating the data dictionary tables directly, or to grant roles directly, adding a row in the sysauth $ table, and the protections doesn't work, because the protections only work with the grant statement. But if we insert a row directly in the sysauth $ table, we do the same, and the protection doesn't work. But this technique doesn't work anymore on latest releases. So if the SYS user can compromise Oracle Database Vault, if we can impersonate the SYS user, for example, exploiting a SQL injection, we are able to compromise Database Vault. Well, to protect from these SQL injection attacks, we should apply the critical patch updates and reduce the attack surface by revoking the execute privileges for packages that are in the SYS schema. Well, I have some examples. We are running a bit late, so I will go fast here. This is a vulnerability in the set output to Java store procedure. Basically, it will impersonate the